Welcome to Hospitality for Hospitality, the podcast that brings the back of the house to the front. And in today's episode, we're going to talk about a topic that is important for every industry, but especially critical in hospitality: how to hire and retain high quality employees. Let us begin. For today's challenge, I have with me Eli Fuchs, the Regional Director of Operation at Valor. Eli, it's a pleasure to have you on the show.
Yeah, this is very exciting, Omri. Thank you for inviting me. Looking forward to it.
So, Ellie, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So I'm a lifelong hotelier. Been in the industry for about 20 years, mainly in operations, but I did work in sales for a few years as well. I've worked for Hilton, Marriott, IHG, Wyndham, La Quinta, and now presently I'm with Valor Hospitality. Found a great niche company that does a tremendous job in instituting culture and great guest experiences at their hotels. So must say I'm pretty happy where I'm at right now, and just looking forward to continued success.
Amazing. So, you're the perfect guest to today's topic. So, before we begin and kind of break down and figure out what are the good ways for us to hire and retain employees, why do you think it's so difficult in hospitality today to actually hire and retain um, people?
Yeah, I think it's a compounding challenge. I think part of the challenges is the hotel industry really requires long hours and challenging hours. Depending on what department you're in, it could require to be at the hotel early in the mornings, late at nights. The demand timing for hotels typically is also runs into the highly social hours as well. So it's a challenge to ask people to sacrifice those times with their families and friends, and focus on their career and showing up and giving their best effort at work. So I think hours are a challenge. The environment itself can be challenging at times, depending again where the property is and the clientele. That can also pose a challenge. And I also think we're starting to experience a gap in skills that is somewhat attributed to COVID. I think during COVID, we noticed, a lot of furloughs and layoffs as, occupancy plummeted. And then we also noticed a lot of the labor force, sampling different types of jobs, whether it was, kind of delivery services through Uber Eats or Grubhub, and trying, very in the day, for the day type jobs that give them more flexibility upon their schedule. And now we're starting to see that gap in delivering the experience that brands and hotels are looking to deliver. So it's definitely a complicated issue that we're experiencing right now. But I think that there are ways that you can hire, retain, train, and challenge employees to help you deliver the experience that you're looking for.
Yeah, I think before Rico, I used to be a guest mainly in hotels, and I never thought how difficult people work at the back of the house. And since I started to work a lot with chefs and housekeeping manager, oh my God, the amount of effort they put just to make this show incredible for the guest, it's very tough. Now, if we think about specific roles, maybe after COVID, you mentioned COVID, that are more difficult to hire. Do you have specific ones in mind, like chefs or housekeeping, or is it across all departments?
It really is across most of the departments. Housekeeping was always a department that was challenging even before COVID, and there's no difference now. We still see the same challenges. I will say food and beverage is a challenge as well. Again, with the competing companies, like I mentioned earlier, that are interrupting normal business protocol pre-COVID. So we're finding a challenge of the in the day for the day job as opposed to the career oriented candidate. And I think also like skilled workers, specifically as it pertains to maintenance, also are a bit of a challenge right now. Just finding somebody who's willing to, again, encompass all of the dynamics that an engineer has a responsibility over at a hotel, including the peak times that those issues might or those circumstances might arise. Again, the hotel industry is a 24/7, 365 job. We're one of a few industries that never close. And so that also can be a bit of a burden for people when they're at home and the boiler stops working, and or pick your issue. So those are the main I think departments that we see across the board. Again, depending on your market, it could differentiate a little bit, but that's what we're seeing in our industry.
So, if we become a little bit more practical, how do you hire today? Which channels do you use, or how does the interview process looks like at Valor or in general from your experience?
Yeah, so I think you really need to be dynamic in your approach. That's for sure. It's not like the old times where people would come in and ask, "Are you hiring?" Or you just post a job ad and just let the people come to you. It doesn't work that way traditionally anymore. So job boards, whether it's internal, external, LinkedIn, Indeed, all of those are obviously a necessary part of the search. But more so, there's an added emphasis on recruitment. So recently, Valor had participated in some career fairs. We were at Penn State University's career fair. It's really about now going out and recruiting more so than waiting for a circumstance to arise. So the focus now is to constantly recruit. You're actually looking for candidates all over who possess and display the skills necessary to be successful at this role. Operators like myself have to be a little bit more dynamic and creative to find the foundational characteristics in a candidate and be willing to train rather than looking for somebody who might have 10 years experience at the front desk, because some of those folks just they're not prevalent right now. I think obviously social media is very important. Not just advertising on social media when you're hiring, but advertising what you do at the hotel, right? What's fun about working at the hotel, and why should people come to work for you? So it's that online presence as well. And I think it's also important. We've participate at a number of our hotels in a international work visa program called the J1 program, which also brings international workers over from a variety of countries. And I think that has really been helpful from a cultural dynamic. Anytime that you can bring in employees from a different country, it brings more of a family environment, family feel to the team. Typically, it helps the team kind of gel a little bit more, and you learn about each other's cultures. So it really becomes a fun experience. So the long and the short of it is it's a dynamic approach. It's a 24/7, job, and not just from, a corporate recruiter or a recruiter, but also from the general manager or, your people and culture team on site. You're constantly recruiting and always focusing on, if you don't have a job available right now, making sure you keep in touch with good candidates to keep them aware of when opportunities arise. So those are just a few of the ways that we utilize different approaches to find good candidates.
Out of curiosity, in a couple last conferences, I saw there are companies who offer employees some sort of as a sus, right? That you pay a retainer or something, and they can give you, let's say, bartenders for a weekend or stuff like this. Do you find it useful, or is it just like a patch for getting something urgently done and it's not a long-term solution?
Yeah, so contract labor or task force, those are there are a complementary piece to the team. I think every management company will tell you that their goal is to create your own team. I think from a dedication perspective and driving an experience, it's always beneficial to have your own team. But to your point, contract labor and task force are important. Creating a good relationship with one of those companies that carry the same experience focus as your company is very important. There are a lot of task force or contract labor companies that are prevalent in every municipality in every market. It's really important that you do your research on which companies you use to ensure that they use proper hiring techniques. They vet their candidates, with all the same requirements that your own company utilizes. and have the same expectations from the candidate that you would have of your own employees. So it's a really good, it's a nice fallback option in the event that you lose a person in a critical position or a few people. But long term, the focus is really hiring your own team and retaining your own team.
Got it. So a few more questions before we move on to onboarding. Once we actually find the person, who is the person in charge of the process? Do you have someone who is in HR? Do you have the hiring manager is the one responsible for putting the LinkedIn post or stuff like this? How do you do that?
Yeah, it's a great question. It really depends on your structure and your dynamic. We have our portfolio contains hotels that are 300 plus rooms, and then we have some hotels that are 50 rooms and very niche and boutique that don't have the privilege of having a HR or people and culture personnel on site. So our management company does have a corporate recruiter that can assist in placing ads online, highlighting positions on LinkedIn, using whatever whatever resource that you're looking for to try to recruit for that position. Ultimately, the way it works is people and culture are usually responsible, but in the event that there's not a people and culture team member on site, ultimately the general manager is responsible. Now, there could be certain circumstances where if your need is at the front desk, your front desk manager, your front office manager then hosts the position. So we are starting to see a little bit more focus on the hiring manager and whoever that person would report to, having that individual own the responsibility of recruiting, training, and retaining that employee. So it really depends on the circumstance, but you have the opportunity to be flexible if you have a small niche hotel and just don't have the manpower or to handle that request.
Yep, makes total sense. So let's say we found the person that we want. How the onboarding process looks like, because you mentioned that actually different culture is good because it brings more interest from people to learn about each other, but sometimes it can be pretty difficult in the onboarding. Then one person speaks only Spanish and the other one speaks only English. So how do you make sure that people fit to each other and actually have a meaningful or efficient onboarding process?
Yeah, it's a really great question. It's an important question as well because there are certain companies that are so focused on the right cultural fit, they will actually pay you to leave if you feel like
Wow.
it's not you're the right fit. And Zappos has been one of those companies that have really made the news. I think they pay you somewhere between $2,500 or $3,000 if after the first 2 or 3 weeks that you're not interested in working that company, they will pay you to leave rather than keeping an employee that is just not interested or not fully committed. And I think that says a lot about their culture and how important having a good culture is to their team. So to answer your question, a lot of it's based on preparation. So during the interview process, it's best practice to have the candidate mirror an employee in that department. So hypothetically, if you're interviewing a room attendant, it's best practice to go take the candidate and go see, a room attendant that's active on duty right now and show them, about the job, show them the utensils that you have to utilize, show them the focus, the attention to detail. Those are all really important tasks. So once, you've shown the candidate what their day-to-day job might look like, it's all about the preparation for that first day. We all know the cliche about first impressions. It's incredibly important. So, from day one, it's important to make a warm welcome. So make sure that employee has all that they need on that first day, whether it's, the tax, paperwork, whether it's the onboarding information, the I-9 information, their uniform neatly pressed and ready, name tag. If you offer some company swag, that's really exciting. I think employees love to have some kind of excitement on their first day. So I think all that's really important, and it helps kick off their first day to be exciting and keep them coming back for more. After that, there's just a variety of checks and balances along the way to make sure that we retain that employee. So we have a number of items that we talk about. So from comprehensive training that provides not only just how to do your job, but why it's important to follow specific processes is really important. I think when I first got in the industry, and I'm an example of it, but when someone told me what to do, I would do it. And that was it. And I probably didn't do a good enough job asking why early on in my career. But the new generation of employees are asking why, right? Why do I have to do this? Why do I have to do it this way? And if you don't give them those examples of those reasons, typically they're going to find some circuitous ways to, get to the end result. And sometimes that's a great way to find a new way to do something, but sometimes that's a focus on how to train better. We also focus on cross training opportunities, not too far off, and make sure that people understand that our focus is not just to have you as a lifelong employee in that position, but we'd like people who are career oriented that want to learn more about the industry, and let's subject you to that. The most successful teams have employees that can fill in gaps when needed. So we focus on that. We focus on compliance training. Safety and security is immensely important for us to make sure that, everybody who works on the job is safe and secure and doesn't get inhibited by any kind of issue or mistake along the way. And one thing that I like to do, it's really kind of an important focus for me, is understanding what's important to the candidate. So, my direct reports, or people that report directly to me, are hotel general managers. And I focus on, where do you want to be in 3 to 5 years, right? Do you want to be a regional like myself? Do you want to go into food and beverage a little bit more? Do you want to focus more on revenue management? Whatever the case may be, if I know what's important to you and I can help you focus on, or I can help alleviate your focus about achieving those goals, that gives you more time to focus on delivering the goals that are important to that hotel. So those are a little bit of some of the items that we focus on, and we focus on a comprehensive training that really makes sure the foundation for success has been laid.
I love it. I love actually the Zappos example, because I read a research from Cornell, and they're saying that for every employee that leaves you, it actually costs you roughly about $6,000
Mm-hmm.
because of the interview process and the onboarding that you just mentioned. So it's super crucial. And I also like the fact that you ask a person, "What do you want to do when you grow up?" And it's crazy, but some people just don't know what they want to do. So if you're the person to put them on the right path, I think this is incredible.
Yeah.
So moving on, couple months, if we're talking about what do you want to do as you grow up, let's say a couple months down the road, 4 6 months after the employee already started to get used to his job, hopefully he stayed and he didn't leave anywhere. Um, how do you retain them? How do you make sure they're happy? Specifically, as a regional, you're not in the property all the time, so you travel between your properties all the time. How do you do that? What are your tips for GMs and yourself?
Yeah. So for myself, I learned, you have to learn in this industry. There's so many great ideas and so many people who are dynamic and unique. I learned from one of my former colleagues. He had a very simple, very basic document called favorites. And it was a Word document, and it was about 20 questions long. And it just simply he asked his general managers, what are your favorites? What are your favorite stores to shop at? What's your favorite candy? What's your favorite type of music? What's your favorite cereal, restaurant? I mean, go down the list. He had it. And they would send it
That's
to
what you're
me.
doing during the onboarding?
No, that's what I do. I do that, once we finalize the onboarding. Typically for me, when I hire a general manager, I'll go visit them on their first week. And typically at the end of the week, I do ask them to submit that to me. And what I do is, every time I go visit that individual, going forward, I usually pull out that document and I figure out, what's one thing that I can bring them that shows that I'm thinking of you beforehand, right? I'm not just, reacting once I'm there or focused specifically on the reasons I'm there, but it's really more about that person. So whether it's, somebody who really likes Reese's Pieces and I can go stop by, the grocery store on the way in and surprise them, it's always great, but it really personalizes that experience. And the goal there is that they continue to do that, throughout the hotel. And so my focus is, if we do that, can our housekeeping, while they're cleaning a stay over, if they see that there's a guest who, likes, Starbucks coffee, can we surprise them with a $5 Starbucks gift card, or surprise them with something along those lines? That goes a long way. If you go on a street corner with a hotel, typically if you do a 360, you'll find multiple hotels. So there's a lot, and there's very many choices in our industry. And the more you can personalize experiences, the more likely you are that you get those employees to come back to work the next day, and those customers that come back on their next trip. So that's a focus of mine. But that's not a realistic approach on a day to day, right? So you really have to do your due diligence to create a team like culture at the hotel. My focus is to define, and I ask my GMs to do this, is define to each department head what success looks like in their position. I think it's very important that people realize that you're working towards goals, and that you help them define how to achieve those goals. And it's okay if your plan doesn't work. I ask all of my general managers to create a smart action plan that are focused on the key performance indicators for the hotel. And I always tell them, this is from one of my old bosses, but I said, if I ask you to do this and then I come in, and you show me that the plan is printed out and hangs up in your office, that's great. But if I see it's crisp and neat and hasn't been touched, that means you're not using the plan. You're only doing it because I asked you to do it. I want to see that plan have coffee stains and highlighter marks, and I want to see that it's in use. And as we all know, a plan is great, but we can pivot. If the plan doesn't work, that's fine. Let's pivot and make it work accordingly. But in the hotel itself, we encourage, again, one of our GMs at Valor. He focuses on coffee with the GM, and he focuses on different departments, and he invites anybody from that department to join that during a certain time frame, to just sit with the general manager, talk about whatever they want. If it's just off-site, chatter about personal lives and general interest, great. But if it's about career paths and how do I achieve this and whatnot, that's available too. Recognition is really important, from employee of the month to catch me at my best. Hilton introduced a really good initiative called Catch Me at My Best, and it's really when team members can document seeing another team member do something great. I remember from a previous time in my career, there was a story about a bellman who was in a elevator with a person who looked really nervous and concerned, and he asked, "Is everything okay?" And the person was in town doing a job interview, and he had forgotten his belt. It's probably something I would do when I pack. I typically forget one thing. My wife makes fun of me for it. So the bellman looked at the person and said, "Hey, look, me and you look about the same size. How about I just give you my belt, and when you're done, just come bring it back to me." And that candidate was so floored that the employee was willing to do something that nice for him. And so, obviously it created, a lot of, great feedback, the PR, ran with that story. It was something so basic, so human, but those elements are really important to success. So we really focus on creating those moments where each employee has one-on-one opportunities with not just their department head, but with the GM, with myself, and so on. So those are just some of the ways that we really focus on driving retention at our hotels.
So at the end of the day, it's just being human being, right? We say culture and culture and culture. Just be a good human being, and probably everything will be fine. And do you have any system in place to measure all that? Because GMs and everyone, they're so busy with their day. Sometimes they have no idea if it's day or night. Is
Yeah.
there any way to measure that? Do you put the favorite list in a drive, in a software, in something that you use internally?
Yeah, we have an intranet, with Valor, and we have a whole folder that's just dedicated to GM tools and resources. So, and it's divided up between operations, people and culture, food and beverage. Any kind of resource that you need is available to them. Likewise, I have biweekly calls with my GMs, and we keep as I mentioned, we have a smart action plan, and it's typically focused on financials, guest experience, and employee experience. And so we talk about these things on a biweekly basis to ensure that, as you mentioned, the hotel industry is a nonstop 24/7, 365 business. And I think any hotelier can relate to the fact that when you go in with a plan, one morning, you can get derailed within 5 seconds, and it'd be really easy to, have to deviate off of that plan. So, we always have this business plan with smart action steps to relate back to if we get derailed. So yeah, we have checks and balance systems in place, and we have resources available all the time for our managers to be able to help guide them along the path.
Data is the new oil.
It
For
very much
sure.
is. Yep.
Um, we talked a little bit about individuals. How do you do that in scale for the entire company? You guys have conferences, or maybe a yearly party that everyone comes for a couple of days in one of your properties. How do you maintain the culture across Valor?
We do. So we have annual GM conferences where we, bring the GM offsite to one of our, one of our properties, and we train them, we celebrate them. It's really a focus on collaboration. We have we're very thankful, but we have a lot of award-winning properties in our portfolio, and so we definitely highlight those managers and give them the opportunity to share their best practices. We also have an employee survey annually that usually happens around July timeframe. And by end of Q3, beginning of Q4, we typically have those results all collaborated and dissected with analytics, as you mentioned. And typically, our people and culture team drive a small action plan, 1 to 2 items that are a focus for the next year. And I think it's really important that when we ask for our team members to speak and give us their opinion on their happiness at work, their happiness in their job, their happiness with their direct boss, and so on and so forth. We get as many employees to participate in that survey as possible, but then we also share with them what the results were and how we plan to react according to those results. So I think that's tremendously important from a scale perspective. And we also have quarterly state of the union type calls with our executive leadership team as well. So we do have a variety of ways that we keep in contact with our team members. We keep them informed. We have a very much an open door policy. And one thing I really like about Valor is that it's not uncommon for a department head, an hourly team member to interact with our CEO. The culture is very much an open door policy. And if you have a question, anybody can answer it. And so I really like that. I think, the old ways of being very hierarchy focused and making sure you go through every step of the way is a little bit antiquated. So I do appreciate what Valor brings to the table as it pertains to, the open door policy and involvement from everybody. So those are just a few of the ways that we engage with our team members on a scale type platform.
Sounds incredible.
Yeah.
So, as a short recap, I'll try. You said many important things. So, from the hiring perspective, you need to run through multiple channels. It can be from LinkedIn to J1 Visa. The onboarding process, it's not enough just to welcome them with nice swags, but also to ask them, what do you want to do when you grow up? What do you define as success? This is important things for you to kind of make sure that you see the exact same vision as the new employee. And down the line, down the road, basically to make sure that you created in advance the favorite list, make them feel very kind of personal and welcome, and also keep seeing if they use the same roadmap that you guys shared before, if they're actually using it and it's not just something that they keep in the drawer. Anything else from your side that you feel is very important to kind of leave our listeners with?
No, I think you've done a good job summarizing it. The only other thing that I would say is, creating a focus on culture. I think, one thing that's beautiful about the hospitality industry is, it connects people from all over the world. People love to travel. So, we typically like to encourage, frequent, employee centric like potluck, right? Where people of all different cultures can bring foods that are important to their culture, and there's an opportunity for folks to talk amongst their team that isn't work based. It really allows people to be prideful in who they are and what they represent. And we notice that if you give employees the spotlight to speak about what's important to them, it goes a very long way. And so I would encourage people to do that, on a ever so frequent basis, if it's monthly, if it's quarterly. But it really, in that process, create a circumstance where you require employees of other departments to interact with employees from other departments, right? Don't just focus on staying with the people you know, but push them to interact with people they don't know or they don't speak to that much to drive that cohesiveness. I think it goes a long way. So yeah, if you combine all that summary with a few little sprinkles of what everybody has their own style. It is important to highlight and spotlight employees, give everybody the appropriate time and recognition, and it's usually a recipe for success.
I agree. I think that also here at Reeco, what we try to do in our culture is to make sure that you put enough room for safetiness because people are going to make mistakes like we all do.
Sure.
But if you feel safety enough to do those mistakes, this is where creativity comes into play and you can actually become better in everything, the company, the product, and everything you do. So also this is probably relevant for every industry.
Yeah.
So before we say goodbye, where are we going to see you and Valor for the rest of the year?
Yeah, so we have an exciting year with Valor. We have a nice pipeline of hotels that are in our that are working towards opening. So we're excited about the growth that Valor has. So we've been very successful with some of our properties and our growth and recognition from the hotel brand. So we're extremely excited about that. Valor is just really focused on the same thing. It's really a cultural shift or cultural focus from top to bottom. So the same things that we ask our team members to do is the same thing that we ask our corporate support team members to do. It's be dynamic, right? Think outside the box, be creative. We are 100% focused on growth, but growth through, success through customer experiences, through our client experiences, creating great partnerships. And so that's where you can find us for the rest of the year and going forward. I think that's really it.
Amazing. Eli, thank you so much for your time. I think you shared some very meaningful and insightful uh, facts and things we all can take from here. I appreciate your time and hopefully we'll see you in future episodes.
Thanks, Omri. It was a lot of fun and all the best to you going forward as well.
Thank you.